Welcome to the June 8th, 2015 work session. Tonight, in recognition of Flag Day, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by our Sons of the American Revolution.
To the front line. Ready? All. To the right face. Salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To left face. Front line. Ready? Halt. Left face. Dismiss.
Thank you. It's always great to have you guys here with us. Work sessions are more informal settings to update the council on business items. No vote will be taken on work session items. Tonight, there are 4 items on the agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you are required to fill out a public comment card and turn it into the city clerk. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of each item. Once the item is called, no other public cards will be accepted. Will the city clerk sound the first agenda item?
Our first item this evening is proclamation recognizing Flag Day, presented to the Daughters of the American Revolution, Martha Stewart Bullock Chapter, and the Sons of the American Revolution, Piedmont Chapter. This is being presented by Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Thank you, Siuni. Flag Day is actually the 14th of June every year. It's next Sunday, and since our next meeting is going to be on the 15th, we thought it be appropriate that we present this proclamation at this work session. So I'll read a proclamation for Flag Day in the year 2015. Whereas the Continental Congress of the United States on June 14th, 1777, adopted the first official flag of the United States, and the Congress of the United States on August 3rd, 1949, officially designated June 14th of each year as National Flag Day. And whereas the Congress of the United States on June 20th, 1965, adopted a joint resolution approved by the President to recognize a pause for the Pledge of Allegiance as part of National Flag Day ceremonies and urged all Americans to participate. And whereas the Stars and Stripes have always inspired our men to deeds of valor and sacrifice in safeguarding our heritage and advancing the cause of world freedom. And whereas the city of Milton has always been proud of our national flag and what it symbolizes, knowing that it stands for the best that humankind has ever sought and achieved in the history of this world. Now, therefore, Joe Lockwood, as mayor of the city of Milton, and we as city council do hereby proclaim our participation in National Flag Day on June 14th, 2015. We invite all of our citizens to join in the common declaration of faith, represented in the words of the Pledge of Allegiance, and to pause during this day to rededicate ourselves to the principles and ideals for which our flag stands. It's presented to the Piedmont chapter of the Georgia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution, in the Martha Stewart Bullock chapter, the Daughters of the American Revolution, given under our hand and seal of the city of Milton, Georgia, on this, the 8th day of June in the year 2015. And I'd like to invite the SAR chapter and Martha Stewart Bullock chapter, who's Martha Stewart Bullock chapter is represented by Martha Simons, Priscilla Learning, and Mary Williams. And of course, our usual troops from the Piedmont chapter, George Thurman, Bob Sapp, Paul Prescott, and Rick Brain Fade.
We all do that.
If we would go down, let's present these.
You guys are already lined up and everything. Thanks for being here. Being here.
Receiving life at the polls. I've got a cold, so I someone to get this.
Get close.
All right, here we go. This is the first of 3 cameras. 1, 2, 3. One more than this. 1, 2, 3.
Whether you want to stay, you need to stay. Yeah, let's do more sort of finish, two more pictures of the tape shot.
Hold it in for a long time.
All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
I'd like to present Rick Reese, who's part of the Piedmont chapter.
Hold on. All right, I got you. 1, 2, 3.
Just Mayor, can you step out here, please? During the American Revolution, there were 32 historic flags that developed during that period of time, and I'd like you and your council members to stand out here. Let's look at this flag just for a minute. Come on over here, if you will. In front of the backdrop there was. Hold this flag.
Mary, you said other camera?
No, the other camera's there.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all very much.
Appreciate
Always
y'all.
good to have y'all
Everything
go.
you do. Thanks so much for being here. All right, Cindy, if you'd please call the next item.
The next item is an insurance services office update. And please welcome Mr. Chief Robert Edgar. Mr. Chief. Mr. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last week, last week I was happy to inform you that we received our ISO rating, and that rating was a 2/2X. Last Wednesday, I received the details of that report, and I'd like to do is go over those briefly with you and then answer any questions you may have. All righty? Did it work? Okay, so just a brief summary of ISO. What they do is they're a clearinghouse for the insurance companies, and what they do is they evaluate fire departments and cities and see what their capabilities are of putting out fires, strictly structure fires, businesses, and residential homes of that nature. And what they do is they come in and evaluate the fire department. And they have a rating scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being it doesn't even fall within ISO's rating scale. So it's outside what they would consider a responsive fire department. What they look at is station distribution, responses from 1.5 to 2.5 miles from a fire station, the hazards in the community, any buildings over 3 stories or greater, or it would be like a target, what we would consider a target hazard, where there would be something like Home Depot. It has a lot of flammables, high combustibles, a lot of those types of things in large buildings. And then they look at the available apparatus and the equipment, such as the ladders, the service vehicles, and the engine companies that we have. And then they look at our firefighter, the training, and the certifications that they hold. And in addition to that, they look at fire prevention and the community risk reduction programs that we have in place. And then they also consider through ISO is our IGA that we have with our neighboring cities, such as Alpharetta and Cherokee County. So they look at those and they include those also into our plan. And then they look at the water supply, the hydrant system, and seeing how that's distributed throughout the community. All right, Dave. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Back in 2007, Milton took over what Fulton County had at the time was a 5/9 rating. So we just inherited that rating when we incorporated, or the department started. And then the fire rescue was evaluated in 2010, and we received a rating of a 4 at that point. And they looked at our staffing levels, our needed at ladders, and the stations were identified as significant areas that we needed to improve on, and that's why we didn't go anything lower than a 4, but I still considered a 4 was to be a good benchmark and a good place to start for the Milton, the city of Milton, and the fire rescue department. Our second ISO evaluation started in February of 2015, and the new rating scale changed a bit on how they evaluated departments. They looked more towards training requirements, what our personnel are doing in regards to education. They're looking at, one of the big things that we had to do is put all our company officers through a company officer training, and that's required by every company officer in the department. And that's an 80-hour program that each one of them have to go through. So that was a big accomplishment on our part to get that done. They changed some of the requirements in the equipment. In the past, ISO had their own list of equipment that they wanted on a fire truck. But NFPA, which is a standard the fire department follows, is National Fire Protection Association, they had their own standard. So those two finally came together, and now we have one standard that they're both looking at, and that's the one standard that we now meet. And then they let more of an emphasis on community risk reduction, which is our pub ed programs, our prevention program, our inspection program. We pre-fire plan every commercial building in the city, so all of that is incorporated into this. And then also our building codes and plan review is part of that as well. So the analysis for 2015, with Milton receiving a 2/2X, we received 84.69 points out of a possible 105.5 possible points. And what that means is that the residents within 5 miles of a fire station and 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant received that 2 rating. So their property, their insurance, hopefully their insurance ratings would reflect that in that 2. It's the people that are outside the 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant are going to receive that 2X. So they're within 5 miles of the fire station, which you can see on the map there. I'm sorry, you can't see on the map here. That map there. The entire city is covered within 5 miles of a fire station, whether it be Alpharetta, Cherokee, or Milton. The entire city is covered. The problem is that we have residents and properties that are outside the 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. So we could have a 20-acre plot where a homeowner may own 20 acres and their house is set so far back into the property and that fire hydrant's on the road out front, it's beyond the 1,000 feet. So that resident there would earn that, or has earned that 2X, which is basically what a 9 used to be. So we're back to a split rating, and this is just the new way ISO is doing this. Let me go on to some of the positives that we received from this rating was our training. We earned some great points on training. Oh, back one. There it is. Our training, our prevention activities, our dispatch system, our automatic aid, and our records maintenance, our records and maintenance of equipment all received great points, and we maximized most of the points on all of those areas. The areas that we have to improve on is our station distribution, our ladder trucks to address the 3-story or above buildings, and our staffing levels. And I'll go through some of the details on that just so I can clarify. If you look at this is a breakdown of the actual points earned. And you can see on the emergency reporting, we earned 8.15 out of a possible 10 points. And that's 10% of the rating. And those areas there fall under Alpharetta with the dispatch system and all. So the points that we didn't earn there have to do with some circuits and staffing levels that they have. So, and they were working through those, but I did check with Alpharetta, and this is the same point value that they had earned in that particular area. Credit for the fire engines, we 6 points there. We got the maximum points there. The reserve, we got the maximum points. Pump capacity, we have the maximum points. The ladder service is where we were hurt, is that our ladder, we don't have a ladder within 2.5 miles of our 3-story or above buildings. That has to be within 2.5 miles to get that full credit for that, and we don't have that at this point. Now, when we purchase our new ladder truck, the goal is to put that where Station 1 is now with Truck 1, and then move Truck 1 to Station 41 to cover the Crabapple area, because that's where our 3-story and above buildings are, that we don't have a ladder within 2.5 miles of. The reserve and the service truck, we got the maximum points there, and the deployment analysis, that's where we took a hit. It's got to do with the response time, that we cannot get all our people within what they call they want a 4-minute response time. Our average response time is 6 minutes. So without having fire stations throughout the city that we can meet that 4 minutes, that's where we're going to be hurt. So that's why we took a hit on that one. And then the company personnel, they recommend that we have 18 personnel on shift every day. We're currently getting credit for 12. So again, that's just adding more personnel, more apparatus, and more fire stations to meet those and get those numbers up. The training, we had 8.97 out of 9 points, and our credit for operational considerations, we got 100. We got 2 of the 2 points there. Water supply, we got all the points. Hydrants, all the points, and inspections and flow testing, all the points for that. And then the community risk reduction, that's added right on top of all the points. So there's no formula, because all of these work through a formula that they plug into a computer and they pop out these final numbers. The community risk reduction is just 5.5 points added right to the end, which is a great benefit. The divergence is the points that we lose because of personnel, fire stations being in that response time of 4 minutes. They take that and they put all that back into the computer, and that spits out a divergence, which they say is, even though you may have the best water system, if you don't have enough personnel to fight the fire, that's going to affect your divergence, and that's what that reduction is. That divergence last time was almost 9.8. So we've brought it down with what we're doing and the way the new system is working, but that's still a good hit for us, is that 5 point. And just for reference, Alpharetta had, I believe, a 1.68 divergence. So it was considerably lower than what ours was. And then I just answer any questions you may have. I know I went through it kind of quick. I don't know how much of a detail you really wanted, but I didn't want to take too much of your time. I do have the report if you'd like it. I'd be happy to send it to you all. But
when will these new ISO, are they enacted at this point now?
No, September 1st.
September 1st. And then the question would be, do citizens need to notify their insurance companies to reclassify or to confirm that, or how's that process? Do you know? What we have is, and you had asked for a press release on this, and we have that prepared, and we're ready to send it out. I just wanted to meet with you tonight before that went out, but that's the message there, is for these homeowners and property owners to make contact with their insurance company to see what the impact is going to be on them. A lot of insurance companies will what they call banding. They may take the first 3 ratings, 1, 2, and 3, and put them together, and that will be the rate. Instead of saying there's a rate for 1, there's a rate for 2, or a rate for 3, and so on. So that's what they'll do with that. So, and not all insurance companies follow ISO, and that may be something that the property owner will have to make contact with their insurance company as well and see what that if they do follow ISO and what the impact will be. One thing I did do is ask ISO to send me a list of all the 2X properties in the city, so we could at least notify them and let them know, and see if there is any. One way to get away from the 2X is if they have a credible water supply. We know if their hydrants are out on the street, it's probably cost prohibitive to put that hydrant closer to their home. But if they have a pond or something where we could actually draft from that pond, that's a credible water source. So they may already have that. ISO doesn't know it, or we don't know about it. So if we can identify those properties and reach out to them, we'll do that and see if they have that, and that may help them. The question to that is, are there anybody that may fall in the 2X right now? Is that a worse scenario than what they have already been, or would they have been considered a 9 on the split system already?
No, we had a single rating of 4, so this will be a change for them.
Okay. Bill, did you have a question?
Chief, you mentioned the gigged us on staffing level.
Correct.
How can we take care of that deficiency? And where's the deviation there?
Well, the only way to fix that is put more firefighters on scene within the 4 minutes response time. So the better we can do that, the better our point value will be. So I guess it depends on how much money do we want to invest in receiving a class 1, because that's our next step. We're just 5.5-ish points away from that. So if we can increase our staffing or add that ladder truck, put another station in, which is part of our 7-year plan, that will put all those pieces together, which will reduce the divergence and then increase our points and hopefully get above that 90 mark where we need to be, above 90 to get the class 1.
So it's not solely due to the fact that we're lacking more personnel. It's also based on the fact that we're going to reassign the Quint over to 41 and eventually put another station out here someplace.
Correct. All of those pieces will help increase our point value in reaching that, hopefully the goal of being number 1. Don't get me wrong, number 2 is awesome. There's only 917 fire departments in the country that have a Class 2 rating. So I'm very proud of that and what the guys have done to achieve that. So don't get me wrong there, but I'm always striving to make that next step, and that next step is a Class 1.
You also mentioned the deficiency in response times. Is that a function of how our roads are laid out here, or haphazardly laid out here in the area, and the fact we're not on a grid system as far as our transportation system goes?
That's probably the largest part of it, is the way our roads are set up, 2-lane roads, and then some of it's our station, the way the stations, because we've got a station way north, way south, and then one southwest. So
Right.
We're really not set up the way, if you wanted to start over and position these fire stations the way they should be, we would do a better job than the way they are set up right now.
Not strategically located, right?
Correct.
So it's, I guess one of the ways we can correct that then is to add another station then, eventually.
Correct, and we've already identified that, and again, like I said, it was part of the 7-year plan that the city manager put together, that'll improve our response times as well as all the other pieces of this, putting more personnel, another fire truck in that area, and reducing our response times, and then reducing the divergence piece of that.
Well, good job bringing us to this level.
Thank you. Any questions?
Anybody else have a question? Okay, again, just ditto what Bill said. Good job, a lot of good hard work, and what a great, that's a huge improvement. So.
Thank you, and again, it goes to the firefighters they're actually doing all that work. They've worked hard to get here, so and I'm proud of what they've done. So thank you.
Yeah, we are too. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Sudi, if you'll call next item, please.
Our next item is the discussion of RZ 1511 to create the Arnold Mill Form Base Code, Chapter 64 of the City Code, Article 21. Ms. Kathy Field.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. As you know, we have completed the visioning study for the Arnold Mill corridor, and this was based on an identification of this corridor within our comprehensive plan. So that has been carried out, and then now to implement this vision, we have created a form-based code for the corridor, and we've hired Tennell Spangler and Walsh, represented by Caleb Rassico tonight, who's our consultant, who will give you a overview in terms of the proposed code, and certainly we'll be willing to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Caleb.
Thank you, Kathy, and good evening, Mayor and Council. As Kathy mentioned, my name is Caleb Rassico. I'm with the planning firm of TSW, and we've actually done several other form-based codes for you in the City of Milton, including the recently adopted updates to Crabapple and the recently adopted updates to the Deerfield area. And so given that background and given the Council's familiarity with what form-based codes are about, what I wanted to do this evening is provide an overview of what are some of the specific elements of the Arnold Mill form-based code that are very different from the other ones. And as Kathy mentioned, anytime we work on a coding process for a community, we try to develop a very strong understanding of what the public aspirations are behind that code. What is the amount of community outreach that has occurred to get us to where we are? And then very importantly, how do we take that vision and code for it? And so as you're very familiar, the Arnold Mill Road character area of the comp plan was looked at several years ago as part of a visioning study that brought together residents, businesses, and property owners in this area at a variety of meetings to determine what the community should be. The plan looked at land use and development, it looked at transportation, it looked at recreation, and then very importantly, it also looked at water and sewer, and put these together into a vision of what the area should be. Now, the visioning process was resulted in several principles, several policies, that I think are very important to remember as we talk about the code this evening. Among those were to preserve the area's unique resources, both its rural character and its environmental resources, to prevent strip development and encourage development that would be concentrated at key locations on the corridor. Very closely related to that, the corridor plan called for avoiding standard subdivision development, and with that said, also avoiding very dense development. The idea here was to create a series of rural hamlets at specific intersections that would have open space and provided conservation areas surrounding it. Now, the visioning study also gave some preliminary feedback to me, the coder, in how to get there. It talked about using a series of transfer development rights to achieve that. It mentioned that these nodal areas could be TDR receiving areas, meaning higher density areas, and that the rural areas could be potential TDR sending areas. And then finally talked about incorporating a methodology similar to Crabapple and Deerfield, where we thought not just about the use of a property, but also the design of a property, a so-called form-based code approach. But it did have an interesting fact that was thrown in there, which was that the character of Arnold Mill was truly unique. The plan talked about how Arnold Mill, even though it had similarities to Crabapple and similarities to other parts of the city, was something special, was something different. And so as we took the code and we went from plan to code, we made sure that the densities, the lot coverage, the architectural character were in some ways unique in accordance with the visioning process. And so with that said, it also talked about some continuing aspirations about the design of the buildings in Crabapple and how they would be different from Arnold Mill Road, and then the importance of an outreach effort. So one of the things that is very different from the Arnold Mill Road code, from the form-based codes that we've done for Crabapple and Deerfield, is that central piece, that hallmark of the Arnold Mill Master Plan, which called for taking development that would normally be spread over a relatively large area and concentrating it into a series of walkable hamlets. The visioning document included several examples of this. An example is before you, which essentially shows creating higher density growth at key crossroads and within key adjacent residential areas in order to ensure that the residential and rural character that is so important of the area be remained. That could occur in a primarily residential character, as I just showed you, or in a more intensive commercial character. And the final important piece of doing that was this idea of doing it using the smart code template for the form-based code that would, again, incorporate all of the design provisions of the other parts of the city's form-based codes, but in a very unique character. So what does that mean? What does that mean for Arnold Mill Road? So as we looked at the visioning study and we looked at the current zoning of the area, I think it was very important to look at the pattern of current entitlement. If you look at Arnold Mill Road, running from essentially almost Crabapple on the south to Cherokee County on the northwest, the majority of the area today is zoned AG1, which, as you know, is a 1 acre lot minimum size entitlement. Within that framework, however, there are some areas that were zoned to higher density when this was part of Fulton County. Along the northern end, there are areas that are zoned C1, which means they allow commercial rights today. And then in addition, there are a couple of parcels that are currently zoned R2A. And so this zoning framework is something that we wanted to look at to understand what we were dealing with as we went from the vision plan to the actual code. Now, with that said, we also had to think about how we took those zoning rights that are there today and translated them into this visioning plan. So the first thing we did is say, okay, we know that we have what are called T2 areas in Crabapple and Deerfield. These T2 areas are very analogous to the areas in the visioning plan that will remain rural, the areas that are outside of these nodes, outside of these activity centers. But within those nodes and activity centers, we could have higher density development through coding to what is called T3 and T4 districts. And so we essentially use that framework to take the current zoning map and create a proposed regulating plan that showed how we would take current rights, we'd take the visioning process, and we could come up with a framework for codifying it. Now, as you look at the regulating plan, you'll notice several things that I think are very important that directly emerged from the visioning study. The first is that there are proposals for two primarily nodal development areas, or the areas shown in dark purple. These are at the north part, in the areas that are currently zoned for commercial today or R2 today. And then there's another one at the Cox Road and Arnold Mill Road area, an area that today, as you know, is in fact zoned AG1. So this nodal development pattern would actually be a significant upzoning to that area. Now, if you look at it, you'll also notice that within that southern node, there's essentially two shades of purple. The purple area on the west is recommended for a T3 or suburban residential character, while the area to the east is proposed as a T4 open character. Now, I'll get into a little bit about what those mean in a moment, but part of the reason that was done in that particular location was because there's been this idea of creating an extension of Cox Road across and over to, I believe, New Providence Road. And so as we were thinking about how we could create an incentive for property owners to do that, one of the things we wanted to do was give them a little bit more density in that particular area to make that node actually happen, and to make that road connection happen. And so within that regulating plan framework, the code is structured identically to Crabapple and Deerfield in that it has 6 articles. It has an article that talks about the regulating plan, which, as I mentioned, is a literal translation of the visioning study with a series of commercial nodes and rural areas around it. But there are some things that are also in here that are very different. For example, in Arnold Mill Road, we developed a series of customized street standards and customized setback standards that would reflect the fact that Arnold Mill Road is a much more rural character today. And so all of those elements have been incorporated in this code after working very closely with Carter to make sure that they align with all the transportation plans. Some other things that are different from the previously adopted codes is that we've also worked with city staff to make sure that this form-based code incorporates a series of multi-use trail and bicycle facilities per the citywide master plan, which is, again, a little bit different from the initially adopted Crabapple and Deerfield code. And then we've also spent quite a bit of effort on making sure that the lot metrics, meaning the front yard setbacks, the side yard setbacks, the lot coverages, and very importantly, the density numbers are calibrated to this particular area. And I'd like to talk about density now because I know that that has emerged as a very important topic of consideration on behalf of property owners in that area. We are aware that several property owners on the corridor are interested in much higher densities than are actually proposed in the initial plan. And so again, I just wanted to talk to you about how we got to those numbers that we proposed in the draft that we prepared for the city. As was mentioned, density was something that was tied to current zoning. And so when we identified areas for higher density development, they were properties that were either in a identified commercial node in the visioning plan or, very importantly, already had commercial or R2A zoning. And so that's one area. But the other thing that we've done is we've incorporated a transfer development right mechanism in this code in order to allow higher density at these nodes, but in exchange for the preservation of open space. Again, that strategy was specifically called for in the visioning plan, and so we were obligated to incorporate it into this planning process to the extent that we can. So in terms of how density actually plays out, the T2 area, as I mentioned, which is intended to be the preserved rural areas, is extremely similar to AG1. Similar density, similar lot coverage, similar setbacks, etc. The T3 area, which is the suburban areas today, or proposed suburban areas, are actually properties that, if this code was adopted, would be upzoned, meaning they would go from AG1 zoning at 1 unit an acre to a proposed base of 2 units an acre, really 100% upzoning on the moment the code was adopted. Now, this area, because it is intended to be an area where density is directed, includes both a base density of 2 units an acre and the possibility of going up to 5 units an acre through use of transferred development rights. So in terms of character, it would be similar to what you see at Brayburn, the Brayburn development in the Crabapple areas. Homes that may have front-loaded garages would be on larger lots, but would again be in a more walkable setting than what you would customarily see. Now, we have heard, as I mentioned, from some property owners that there's some concern about this particular part of the code, and I just wanted to make you aware of that. The concern is in the T3 district, we have coded for 10-foot side yard setbacks, and at the same time, we are trying to encourage the use of transfer development rights. And so it was pointed out to us that within Crabapple, there is a provision in the code that allows for reduced setbacks if TDRs are utilized, which I think actually does make a lot of sense. If you're going from 2 units an acre to as many as 5 units an acre, you do want to be able to use your lot a little bit more with additional density and additional setback provisions. So I would just throw out to council that if this particular concern is something that you would like us to look at, we do already have language written in Crabapple that could be incorporated verbatim into this particular code to allow people using TDR to have a little bit more flexibility in their setbacks. Now, another district that we have, as I mentioned, the T4. T4 is slightly more intense, slightly higher density than T3. This part of the community would get a base density of 3 units an acre and could actually go up to 6 units an acre with transferred development rights. The lots would be a bit smaller than T3. They would have a bit shallower setbacks, but they're still very in keeping with this idea of a rural village, a rural hamlet. And then the final district we have is what we're calling T4 Open. And as you may remember from Crabapple, this is intended to have a development character that is very similar to T4, but the difference is that it would allow commercial uses by right. Again, what we did not want to do was take properties that were zoned C1 today and take away people's rights to do commercial on them. And so we created this T4 Open District that could be applied to those areas. There is also a provision in the code that would allow for additional commercial uses within 200 feet of Arnold Mill Road in the T3 and the T4. So in the event that there was a property that fronted Arnold Mill Road and that was otherwise designated T3, there is a provision for allowing a little bit of commercial on the front as advocated in the master plan. And then in terms of architecture, this code also incorporates architectural standards. They are based on Crabapple, but they're actually simplified. If you've ever read the Crabapple architectural standards that came out of that master plan, you'll know they're a little bit complicated. And so what we've done is based on the feedback from the city architect and staff and just general feedback, we've taken the architectural standards in Crabapple. We have simplified them, reduced some, eliminated some in order to reflect more of the architectural styles found in some of the older farmhouses in that area and incorporated that into this particular code. So in a nutshell, that is an overview of the Arnold Mill Road form-based code. It is a code that we have attempted to base very closely on the visioning plan, doing that in a way that respects and responds to current zoning entitlements, and then very importantly, incorporating some of the best practices from the recent updates to Crabapple and Deerfield and then staff feedback into the individual code. And so with that said, I would love to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Sudi, do we have any public comment?
We do have one, sir.
Okay. Caleb, if you don't mind,
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to get public comment, and then we'll open up for questions.
And this is from Mr. Don Houseford.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. If I could take a moment just to orient you on where the properties are. I have a map here if we could distribute it.
Okay.
Just give you just a moment to give you a quick idea of where we're located. Oh, I'm sorry, Don Hospital, 345 Cox Road. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Don Hosfeld. I represent Danny Elkins and Chris Asbell, the operators of the Georgia Golf Center at Cox Road and State Route 140. And I also have been pleased to be a part of a group that you see there that's a core group that comprises approximately 50 acres. We have worked together as a group. We have similar interests, but I wanted to be clear that I'm only here specifically referencing Danny and Chris's property. Their property, they've been operating, our core group has owned the property from 20 to 43 years. So it's not something that has happened overnight, and it's certainly not speculative. Danny and Chris have been operating that center for over 20 years. I don't think anybody lives in the area that hasn't been there one time or another. They've kept it nice and clean. Danny lives on the property. They have watched the area grow. And I think a significant difference between this property and the others, as it was just described on taking existing zoning classifications, back 20 years ago, when Danny and Chris wanted to operate the driving range, Fulton County only classification, the way that they treated it, was AG1, was a special use. I'm in the development business. I am not the developer for their property. I don't have any financial interest in it at all. I've just known these guys for 20 years, and they asked me for some help. Bless them. I hope I can do a good job for them. But in other communities that I've operated in, it's been general commercial with a special use permit for a driving range. So I think if we get past all that and you just go over and you see how Danny and Chris operates, and you see the number of cars that come in and out of there, and you see the lights on till 11 o'clock at night or beyond, that, in our estimation, is certainly a commercial use by the standards of a commercial use, with traffic, lighting, all the other elements that commercial uses brings. So I just want to differentiate us because of who we are and what our operation is. If we were in a different municipality, you would be looking at a commercial classification with a special use permit for a driving range. I think that's unique to us. But be that as it may, we started about 2 years ago I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, there was a question, I'm sorry. We started about 2 years ago, and we enthusiastically got involved with it because what was presented to us is that intersection was going to be an activity node. I think anybody that drives up and down there and sees that intersection and sees the growth over the 20 years, there's no doubt if there was going to be an activity node, that's where it would be. And it was also described to us that it was going to be a less intense activity node than Crabapple. We went about it over the last 2 years of developing product that we thought would best be suited for our properties and presented it to staff, and I think it was enthusiastically accepted because we never pushed the densities. So in that vein, we were very excited to see the form-based code come out. Now, I do want to say that from our perception, the density that is in the form-based code has never been the issue. I think what's best that it was put at one of the meetings is that Crabapple is a village, as Arnhem Mill is a hamlet. That's never been a negative thing for us to work under. The T3 that we are zoned to, or that's in your form-based code, is very specific. It allows you to go up to 5 units per acre. What you may have before you, if not, I am going to distribute our thoughts in just bullet points on one page, and those bullet points will cover our property and the other 50 acres, is that our product that we're looking for here is going to be more geared towards the empty nester, more geared towards not specifically to an empty nester product, but to have a mix of product types that allow for those people to function together as a community under a density that fits within the current form-based code as presented by staff. So this is a little unique, is that we are standing here not asking for more density. Density has never been the question. What came out in the form-based code is a differentiation between the permitted right. The permitted right for the other T3 classifications are 3 dwelling units per acre. We are at 2, which puts us at an economic disadvantage. And I can't do this without being a little bit sensitive to that, of knowing that they've been there for 20 years and watched the entire growth. the growth that occurred in crabapple, for instance, I've been here 28 years, so I've watched crabapple develop, and the existing zoning classifications in that area, when you put the form-based code on it, was a much lower classification. Some of them were AG1. So this is a very similar situation there, except the only difference is that we are asked to pay more. We are asked to pay for that given right. And an interesting and unique fact, I think, is that with the form-based code in Deerfield and crabapple, not one TDR in 3 years has been purchased. Now, there was one pending about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so it may have closed. But in the world, the capitalistic world that we're in, you take a group of developers that look at a form-based code in crabapple and Deerfield and say you can increase your density, and not to have one sold, I think, causes a reason to pause to say, why was that? And it's our opinion that it was because there was a reasonable economic use under the given right. Also, it makes it very difficult to determine what that TDR price is. It's based upon what the market bears. It's based upon if there are people that are willing to sell their TDR rights. If you can imagine going to try to position your property, and I might add what's unique about Danny and Chris's too, is that in the world of golf, the driving range and teaching facility is drying up. Top Golf is a perfect example of that. These guys are not going to have another tier of golf professionals come along and want to operate a driving range for another 20 years. So they are at a crossroads in their career to where they're looking at what they're going to do next. And I think that given right is a very specific burden on them to have to go to someone and say, you have to buy 2 TDRs in order to get the density that you need to build your project. Well, what's the value of those? You know, I've heard a presentation by staff and the consultant on what TDRs are anticipated to be in crabapple, and I've been told that there'll be less. If you can imagine, I mean, it's just a moving target. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think if crabapple and Deerfield had a lower permitted right, I think that you would have a much different looking crabapple and Deerfield than you do today, which today is a very successful development. I might also add that when you look at our changes that we've made to the building setbacks, that is specific to a product that we presented to staff that has this mix of empty nester. Empty nester is a wonderful thing because they don't get on the road during the peak hours. They have disposable income, and I might add, there's not a lot of that around. If you go look at Masters on the Main and go look at something that's got a small yard that's not an attached side house, not a townhome, it's basically nil. There basically is no product out there. So we're trying to generate something unique that will fit well in the area, that will provide also the economic engine for the commercial development that's going to be in that activity as well. So with that, I just want to rephrase, is that density has not been the issue in the way that the code was drafted for density. The issue is that our project in this specific case is at an economic disadvantage because we have to pay for the same rights as the folks down the street and in crabapple and in other places do not have to pay for, and that's a significant disadvantage for us. So I thank you very much for your time and be willing to answer any questions you might have for me. I will, if it's, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I've got it's just a one-page bullet points. If I could leave those with you. And
is that the same thing that John?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Caleb. I assume that's all of our public comment.
That is, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, I'll open up for questions to Caleb from council. Bill?
Caleb. With this proposed form-based code, Arnold Mill Road, are there any deviations or conflicts with our comprehensive land use plan, given this form-based code?
Not to my knowledge. The comp plan does actually talk about preserving a rural character on Arnold Mill Road and having dense activity center nodes. And so the area we've actually drawn aligns with that character area in the comp plan.
They do conform.
Yes, yes. Michelle's been making sure that they do.
Okay. Anybody else? Matt?
The presentation, is that going to be emailed to us? I just haven't seen the map other than tonight. Can we get that map of the boundaries sent to us? It's on.
Look in under your text paperwork.
Oh, way at the back. Way at the back. I didn't see
Very
that.
last.
I got it. Very last page. Okay, we got it.
Very last.
Chair?
Is there a reason that you chose the number of units per acre to be different in Crabapple, different in Deerfield, and different in Arnold Mill? Is it because the areas are just happen to be different?
Yeah, well, part of it was because the Arnold Mill Visioning Plan does talk over and over again about this idea of a hamlet, which would be much more rural in my mind. And it also talks much stronger than either of those other two about using TDR to gain additional density. And so that was part of what we did. We used those numbers because they were less intense. The area, as was mentioned, is primarily zoned AG1 today. And so we wanted to try to codify what was in the visioning plan as much as possible. If you look at the visioning plan and you even look at the graphics that were done, the lots are much bigger than what we see in Crabapple. In Crabapple, we have some lots that are 50 by 100, and virtually all the lots in the visioning plan are much larger than that. So it was my effort to take what came out of a public process, take what came out of current zoning, and put it into a plan that would match that area, using a format but customizing it to Arnold Mill Road.
So there was a reason that you came up with the numbers that you came up
Absolutely, yes.
with through the whole public process.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and one other thing that's unique to Arnold Mill Road is this presence of the R2A, and we needed to come up with a way that would literally translate R2A to a T-zone. And so we did that by creating the T4, which has identical density as a base to what R2A has. We didn't want to downzone them, so we needed to come up with a way that there was a one-to-one relationship between what they had today and what they would get under the base zoning with the new code created.
But under the current thing, there's no way they would get 9 units per.
Oh, no.
I mean, 9 units per acre is pretty. I mean, there's nothing like that anywhere near Arnold Mill Road.
That is correct. The numbers we had proposed were a maximum of 5 per acre with TDR and T3, and a maximum of 6 per acre with TDR and T4. The 9, which is on the handout, is not something that came out of my recommendation after reviewing the visioning plan.
Okay, Matt?
Actually, I have a question for Don. And you may have said it or not, but in order to upzone, how many TDRs would you have to buy in order to be able to get what you think your right ought to be?
We under the current, we would have to buy 2 TDRs.
2 TDRs? Okay.
And using the math based upon the Crabapple, because the only one, we've only been told what the TDR is in Crabapple, that would be a hit to us of about $900,000 for our density.
Say again? How much?
A 1 TDR to us right now equates to $409,000. It's not small. Now we can debate on what the TDR cost is, but nobody knows what they are. All we've been told is that it's about $40,000 a TDR in Crabapple. Now that may fluctuate a little bit. Regardless of that, the number's a big number.
Okay. Anybody else? All right.
May I add one thing to that?
Sure.
Because I can speak to Danny and Chris. We've talked about this quite a bit. And the densities, the problems that we had with our product, and the reason you see lot size adjustments, is because if you have a 70-foot wide lot and you say that you can get 5 units per acre, I don't know how that is possible, just because of the lot width. If you go over and look at crabapple, I've been looking at tax plats all afternoon. The crabapples are about 0.4 acres per unit. So what I will just tell you, what our recommendation has been since day one, and I think Michelle will either nod her head or say that I'm not speaking what we started out with, but what we've been looking for is nothing more than 4 units per acre. And we've got a great product that will go there. It's just that on 4 units per acre, even with this current code, if we don't get a 50-foot wide lot, you can't get 4 units per acre with the existing ordinance. If we could, we wouldn't be adjusting it. So the talk of 6, and we do certainly appreciate the conversation that we had with Planning Commission back and forth. But when it comes to overall density, we never, since day one, ever even reached anything above 4. And quite frankly, we're probably going to be about 3.8 or something like that. So I just wanted to let you know we're staying true to what we did 2 years ago when we first brought the product in. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, Caleb, or any more questions?
The comment, one of the written comments that the gentleman just brought up is the 70-foot lot width, and essentially what he's referring to is that in T3, we have proposed a minimum 70-foot lot width, which is identical to the lot width in Crabapple. And it's interesting to point out that there's no minimum lot depth. So you could, in fact, achieve 5 units an acre with that lot. You'd have to make the unit shallower, but there is a way you can do it. A 7,000 square foot lot into 43,560 is over 5. And then you'd have to back out some for streets and roadways.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, City, if you'll call the next item.
Our final item this evening is the discussion of Legacy Milton Initiative by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Thank you. Just by way of kind of going back, if all the council up here, and some were here at the beginning of the city, but the thinking in the past was what protected our area, Milton, was the majority of our land was AG1 zoning. We didn't have sewer in about 80+% of our land, which gave you a minimum of 1 acre lots. So even our least dense by right zoning was AG1, allowed 1 home per acre. And while a lot of folks thought that was kind of our fallback, it would keep the area, the general area of Milton rural feeling. I thought a long time ago, it sounds good, but if every one of those lots was built out in 1 acre homes, even though that is considered very low density, it wouldn't look like the Milton that we have now. And then we had the recession, which a downturn, which the last, say, for at least a good 5 years, there wasn't anything going on, and so you didn't see much. And then over the last couple of years, things have certainly turned around. While the overwhelming majority of those areas that are developed are under AG1 or current zoning, that legal zoning, that the council and the staff have no changes on that. That's their rights to develop that way. All of a sudden, with pent-up demand, it looks like a lot of development, which in the last couple of years it is. Now, if you spread that over the last 7 years evenly, it may not be as drastic, but it definitely is. So, as everybody knows here, we've, and as well as our citizens and everybody involved, when there's been a concern about the ongoing development. And while there's been a lot of strides, there has been a lot of strides made and a lot of work going on in past and future initiatives, I wanted to take the time to compile and basically, for lack of a better term, market what the city, both city staff, council and mayor, citizens group, and committees have done, because sometimes you kind of lose sight of that. And so basically, with the help of staff, a few weeks ago, we have compiled, or I compiled, and I called it a Legacy Milton initiative. And what I meant by that is I would hope, and I believe everybody here, that 50 years from now, Milton is different and has a different feel. And we would hope that once we're not here, that we could have an impact, so a legacy. So that was the reason, the term there. Nobody can look in a crystal ball and tell you exactly what things would look like 50 years from now, but I'd like to think as all of us working together, we could make some initiatives and changes that will have a positive effect. So basically, the overall idea of the Milton Legacy is I basically compiled several items, the majority of them existing items that, again, we have all worked hard and put together, but sometimes folks lose sight of it. So basically wanted to compile this list of items that would help conservation and preservation of space, along with a few new ideas that hopefully we can, everybody can put their head together and vet out and come up with some more, so that we could basically market the city to the things that we have done and that we are doing in the future to keep that feel that we have. Now, that being said, this is all done in the spirit of working with existing zoning, existing property owners, not trying to take anybody's rights, any landowner's rights, trying to come up with win-win solutions. And you hear a lot of comments from people say, well, it's easy, the city should just change your zoning and make 3-acre minimum lot sizes or 5-acre minimum lot sizes. Well, I'd love to do that, and I could stand up and say I've done that. I put my money where my mouth is and bought 5 acres. But the reality is the majority of our lots are not that, and legally we can't, and I don't think morally it's right to go in and take somebody, if they've the current AG1 zoning, without having some kind of incentive to just take that away. It'd be the same as taking somebody that lives in a neighborhood and had a $500,000 house and say, okay, we're going to waive a wand and your home's worth $250,000. It's that wouldn't go over very well either. So I'm excited to say when you really start looking at a lot of these items on this initiative that we've already done, along with some new ones, I think there's a lot of merit that we can come up with some things that will incentivize folks to want to preserve their land or develop it less dense, but in a way that they're compensated too. And so that being said, I thought we would just maybe go through and look at the list of ideas that I put on here and kind of get everybody's feedback, take, ideas. Again, this is not a document that I would see us, being an ordinance per se, but it would be just a long-term plan moving forward. Most of the items on there, again, a lot of them have already been accomplished. Some of them that are new we're working on, and some of them, we may be to implement soon if everybody wants to. Some of them are going to take longer, so this is not something that I see that we're going to go through and, on so-and-so date, this is enacted as an ordinance or a resolution, but more of a long-term plan of ideas that we want to keep going, and also, again, for lack of a better term, market to everybody else, both current citizens and future citizens. That Milton's different. These are the things we'd like to do. These are the things we'd like to see, and try to attract a different type of development. The other thing I want to say that there's some other initiatives going on right now and things that the city's looking at. Impact fees, for example, conservation subdivision ordinances. And this in fact, I was talking with Jack Linden earlier today, this by no means is trying to take any of the steam from any of those initiatives that we're working on right now. it's more to put them in place along with others so that I feel like we'll get more traction if everybody's looking at a lot of items that we can move forward with. So again, this is all put together to try to help initiatives and things that are going on now. And again, hopefully we can like to have input from the public as well as obviously the council and I working together on putting this together. But I think it's something that we can work together and do something, and maybe it's something we could have done earlier, and maybe not. But it's no better time than the present to do this, and again get the word out of not only the things that we've all accomplished, and when I say all, our staff, our committees, our citizens, mayor and council, but also toss out some new things and have some things we're going to reach for in the future. So with that, I just thought we would, maybe just briefly touch on some of these items and any questions or any comments, whether we want to pursue those, table them, compound, add some stuff to them. So is there any general questions from council first? If not, if you guys want to just kind of talk about some of these options that either the ones we've already enacted or the ones in the future that we can. Sudie, is there any public comment?
There is not, sir.
Okay. So anybody have any comments or questions in general about maybe with this initiative?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, what you have listed here or depicted on this handout are various codes and ordinances that we have in effect already. Tree ordinance. We've talked about TDRs. We have those enacted. We're considering conservation subdivision ordinance, but these are all individual initiatives that we're working on to address certain items. So what's the mission or the goal of Legacy Milton? Maybe I missed something in your presentation, but we've been trying to approach various issues here with different codes, and so how would you define what we're actually trying to accomplish with this?
As I said, these items that we have in place, again, for lack of a better term, this is marketing the fact that we have these items in place. The things we've put in place, we've done, along with a few new ones, to be able to move forward and trying to not lose sight of the forest for the trees. So all these things individually may not mean a whole lot to people, but if they see them all compiled together, it's like, wow, the city of Milton is really trying to do something. Look what they've got in place. Look what they're looking to do in the future.
So how would you define the ultimate goal then, given all of these items?
I would define the ultimate goal to do everything in our power to preserve Milton and try to keep Milton the way that's different and what drew most folks here.
What do you think about that?
Karen?
Okay. The way that I look at this, these are all tools in our toolbox, and we have to have all these tools together and maybe some additional ones in order to accomplish what we want to do, which is to preserve the area. I think sometimes we forget that, almost every acre of Milton could be developed out at 1 acre, 1.5 acre lots, depending on how you got the septic permits, without ever coming before the city council. And all these complaints we hear about all the development in Milton, these aren't things that we have zoned. These are things that people have been able to develop just because they've had the right to develop it based on the current zoning. Personally, I believe if we're really going to preserve the land like we want to preserve it, and we're going to really preserve the character, we're going to have funds to do that. We're going to have to be able to buy land. We're going to be able to buy conservation easements. We're going to may even have to be able to buy TDRs. We're going to have funds in order to really preserve what we want to preserve. I believe that the green space bond and the impact fees are probably the two things that'll give us the most money the fastest and allow us to buy properties to preserve, or buy conservation easements, offer conservation incentives. And I think that, I'm hoping that if we put out a bond referendum, that the residents of Milton will feel as I do, that it is well worth their money, so that for the city to have the money that they can actually buy property and buy TDRs, buy conservation easements, and really preserve the area. So in my opinion, some of these tools are little screwdrivers. Some of them may be much bigger power tools and give us a much bigger, much more money in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish. But, these are all things that can help us get to our end goal, which is to preserve the area.
And I agree with Karen. I mean, some of these are, if you want to use the term tools and toolbox, some of them are small tools and some of them are bigger, but you put them all together and then your toolbox looks a whole lot bigger and you can have a much bigger impact. And again, to clarify, none of these are, I'm not taking credit for any of these ideas. These are all either things that we've accomplished or things that have been talked about. And again, it's up to the council or us as a group to do these things. But again, to put it all, I felt somebody needed to compile all this and paint this picture so that everybody can see that we do have a lot of good options moving forward. And to Karen's point, I think one of the biggest things that could make a difference is a green space bond. And the reason I like that is we can purchase land, permanently put it in an easement or conservation, and do it strategically in a way that all of our citizens can enjoy it or appreciate that. The other nice thing about that is it lets the citizens make that choice. We float a bond, and of course it's got to be paid for. That land would have to be paid for, so it would require raising money and paying more taxes, and that way we could allow our citizens to make that decision if they're willing to spend an extra $100 a year, $200 a year on their taxes, but we can commit to purchasing and either the rights or the easements, or purchasing land and parks and trail areas and connect, so that everybody enjoys it. And if not, if the citizens, the majority of our citizens don't want to do that, then we've put it out there. The other thing too, and I've always struggled with, as Karen said, when you look at AG1 zoning and somebody owns some land and they can develop it in 1 acre lots, 1+ acre lots. Again, like I said earlier, you legally you just can't go take that away from them. But another big one, I think, impact fees. Obviously, the people that are moving to the area, the more new homes and households and people and cars we have, it's an impact on our infrastructure. Impact fees are there to kind of offset some of the future costs on there. While those impact fees are going to be borne by the future homeowners, and again, I don't think it would really impact. I don't think it would necessarily slow down development a whole lot. People are, would be willing to pay a little bit more to live in Milton, I believe. But it in two things, it allows us to recoup some money for future infrastructure, or again, we can decide we could possibly buy some more land. But on the flip side, that's something that all of a sudden then we've got a carrot there. If there are some pretty significant impact fees on a development, I believe the council, we can sit there and come up with some kind of formula where if somebody's willing to do much less dense lots or number of lots on a piece of property, that in some kind of sliding scale, we could waive some impact fees. So therefore, we're not necessarily taking anything away from somebody, but we're offering an incentive to help with an ultimate goal. So I think the green space bond, if we can just kind of start, and Stacy, I don't know if you just, you guys have been talking to bond agents and all that, and individually with council members a little bit, but if you want to just address it for real quick, because we don't have to get into a whole lot of detail, but to see if that's an item that the council wants to think about if we want to pursue.
Sure. I did speak to a good bit of you last week about the green space bond, and what we spoke with the financial advisors about was what they recommended as far as the term of the bond and what they saw as far as thresholds. For term, they recommended no more than 20 years, because anything longer than 20 years is going to be larger projects like your high schools and your water and sewer and infrastructure type things. I talked with each one of you, or some of you, about what you felt the citizens would pay for in addition to their taxes that they already received from the city of Milton and Fulton County, to preserve the land, to preserve the viewshed, to preserve the ruralness of the city of Milton. And I got, I guess, between $100 and $200 is what you felt the citizens of an average house of about $450,000 would pay in addition to their taxes that they currently are billed. Is that, and I mean, I didn't speak to a couple of you, is that in line with what you feel, $100 to $200?
We'll just talk about first what that would actually do. That would be about $20 million if we were to raise $20 million on a $450,000 house. That would be approximately $150 a year.
Yes.
So, you can kind of do the math from there. If you went up to $200 a year, that's probably $25 million. You certainly could go down. Although if we're going to go through this process and folks really want to do it, you want to have enough in there to make an impact. And there's some other logistics it can't just go just to say to buy raw land. It would have to be there'd have to be a lot of description and tied in with
right.
With
You want to be
and,
as general as possible with the description, because you don't want to call out any specific parcels of land.
Yeah.
Because if you aren't able to purchase that parcel of land, you cannot use that money. And I will say, one of the thoughts that I had in preparing for this tonight was that $150 today might be less in the future, because as Tax Digest grows, the actual amount that we have to cover for or bill out for the taxes to pay for the debt service payment would probably go down over time, because the Tax Digest will be worth a lot more in future years as we bring on more properties and as the property values increase.
anybody want to question or comment on the possibility of doing a bond? Bill?
Yeah, we had kicked around this idea kind of informally before, never really gotten into a discussion of this depth. I think one of the precursors of developing or adopting a green space bond is to adopt a green print. And that's one thing I think that, I know we hired a consultant, I believe it was a year or so ago, to develop a green print. And maybe Kathy can address part of this. But I think that has to be adopted before you can adopt or put a green space bond on a referendum of any sort. But I don't believe we even, after having gone through consultant and presentation of a green print, I don't believe we adopted it.
Well, and I'm not sure we went as far as actually developing a green print. It was more of a conservation plan with various tools mentioned in there, a summary of the different tools that the city had, and certainly of tools the city could use, including a bond referendum. But in terms of actually showing a green print for the area, I think that the conservation plan that was developed stopped a little short of that.
Okay. And let me be specific here, too. This is not necessarily a conversation about are we deciding to do a green space bond tonight or not. There's a lot of work that would go into it. It's more of a conversation in general. Does the council like the idea of pursuing a green space bond? And, you know, our staff's done a little bit of preliminary work into it, but do we want to look into it more thoroughly? You know, this is something that would be tight, but we possibly could get it on this year's ballot. Or, you know, maybe as we move through and get more information, say, well, we're going to need to wait till next year. So, again, tonight's not necessarily the discussion on how much or we're ready to go or whatever. It's more of the discussion on the intent. Would the council like to pursue looking at a green space bond? And obviously, you'd have to get a whole lot more information back before we'd make any decision on moving forward. But, you know, in general, is the thought of a green space bond advantageous to you guys? You're interested in looking further into that?
I do.
I think it's our best way to preserve.
Yeah, I think it's probably a number one, you know.
It allows the voters to
make the decision.
really, make the decision. If this is really as important to them as they say, then, you know, it allows them to vote in favor of it and allows us to preserve it.
Okay, Matt?
And I respectfully disagree with that. And a lot of this, first of all, I wanted to say thanks for putting this out. And I sent you a letter as well for the effort on this week.
Thank you.
And you're right, there's a lot of different pieces to this that I see that's here. And we're doing a lot of things as it is that we have done. I like the habitat designation. You know, I've got some neighbors that have taken part in that. Obviously, the TDRs, the economics haven't really benefited us there yet, but I think they could at some point in time. Since the community is great, we got a lot of people that have been working together on this. You know, I like the idea of the conservation staff as well. I think those are all good things. I do, though, think that we have to think about what's going to be effective and what's not. And as much as the green space bond is a good idea, which I do support as well, I do think we really have to want to give credit to Noel for all his effort in the conservation subdivision.
Yeah, Matt, do you mind if I just break in, because to all your good points, but and again, to make sure there's no miscommunication on this,
Sure.
Majority of all these items have either been in the work, have either been completed or in the works, or we've been talking about. So what I want to do, and just take just a few minutes, if we can just kind of go through each one and kind of get a feel, you know, do we want to pursue this one more, do we not? We've checked this one off, it's all, you know, TDRs we've done, things like that. So if your comments are in general, or if it's specific.
They're
So
in general.
If you want to.
So my point in this is that I think we need to look at the ones that are probably going to be the most effective. And I think looking at the economics of where the demographics are going, we need to really consider a lot of these items, because many of these, as much as we can look at rural viewshed zoning or you know, the tree ordinance or things like that, as much as we try to do that, I think we really need to find ways to balance the economics of the current situation with the demographics of people not wanting to manage large land areas as much as they are as they get older. So from my perspective, I think that some of these have more influence than others. It's just we go through to see what we're going to do. I think all of them should be pursued at some capacity. But we need to think about, particularly as we define this debate, which ones in particular may have the most effectiveness.
Absolutely. So, it sounds to me, and you guys okay with pursuing, it sounds like the majority's okay with pursuing, looking at the greens, the bond for the green space bond. Again, we'll have to, you know, get more information back to us and all that, but it does sound like there's definite interest, which I think we all assumed there was, to kind of move forward and look at that. Jack, do you have a comment? Sure, you fill out a card.
Jack Linden, 14810 East Bluff Road. Thanks for the opportunity. I wanted to comment on specifically on the green space bond issue with respect to the green print. Professor Daniels' conservation plan that he presented specifically talked about a citizens group which would be formed to address issues of what the green print ought to be like, trail plans, specific parcels for TDRs, a lot of those sorts of things. And as I recollect, he was saying that he thought that a citizens group could do that following his recommendations. And so I'd just like to repeat something I've said before, which is I think it's time for the city to put that into action and to actually form a committee. I know there are members of our group, Milton Goes Green, that are more than willing to be part of that organization. So I think, and I'm sure there are lots of other people as well, so I think we can do that at this point.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Karen?
I just want to say I agree with you. I don't think we don't want to buy parcels that people necessarily want to sell. We want to buy parcels we want to preserve. And I think we need the green print to tell us which parcels we want to preserve.
No, that's absolute. We have to, if we do move forward to this, we have to be very careful to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck, so to speak, for the citizens' sake. But so that being said, obviously we have a lot of decisions if we do move forward with the green space bond, whether we're able to do it this year, next year, whatever. There's interest from the council to do it, to look into it. We're going to have to, again, staff will have to look and confirm to make sure what we need to do moving forward with if we need to, the green print and whatnot, confirm that. We'll also be decisions on how much, actual funds we would be looking to propose and present to the public. The other thing, it has to be, the only thing, and I don't know all the specifics, but the only thing we can do as a city is put the facts out. We don't necessarily we can't go out and so-called campaign for this bond. We just put the facts out. Then some citizen groups that feel this is important or other organizations can promote it. But again, all we can do is put the facts out there and let our citizens decide. So, the next thing we are working on, Bill?
Just another comment on Jack's comment there. Confirmed the point that I was trying to get across, that we had already started this process with the Green Print Initiative last year, and we never carried it to the next step. And the next steps after that lead to the adoption of a green space bond. So I am in favor of it, but I think one of the things that's not on your list is the adoption of a green print. So that's kind of a precursor to developing adopting a green space bond.
The green print's under conservation plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's and to your point, Bill. That's a lot of these things we've been working on, but this is to bring them to light and get it kick-started again. So,
but I think part of the comments that have been going on offline here is we're going to rush to get it on the ballot in November. I'm not sure that we have enough discussion time prior to that just to get it on
and absolutely, there's the only rush would be if the community and the council wants to get it on the ballot. We're not trying to necessarily rush it. We are looking in to see what the soonest we can do it, because in my opinion, it would behoove us, if council's on board doing it, to get it on the ballot now, because if we wait a year, it's not going to have as much impact. So impact fees, as we know, we're already in that process and looking at that, so I don't know that we really need to discuss that too much, but that is, would be something that could help to this cause. Conservation easements, again, we're talking about, that's an important thing, and that can, this green space bond can also help promote some of those. So, I don't know, anybody have any comments on conservation easements, or any comments from the public? And the public, feel free to, if some of this discussion brings up a question, you can always fill out a public comment card after you speak if there's something, if you want to get a point across. Another item was conservation incentives. Things change, and back when land was $5,000 an acre, $10,000 an acre, people's motives are different. And as far as conservation incentives, if land was going for $10,000 an acre, it'd be real easy for somebody to just buy some land and sit on it, put some cows out there, and it'd be real easy for the city to give an initiative and say, we're going to cut your $3,000 off your taxes, and everybody'd be a happy camper there. But as property values grow and the dollar amounts are different, it puts people's perspectives different. So, it's a little tougher now. I don't think that if the city gave 100% tax credits, it still would be tough to be a real incentive on some folks. But, we do need to look at ways that because again, every small item we can do helps part of this cause. So I think we need to, look in a little further what the city could do, although the city's percentage of the taxes are a lot less. Maybe we could work with Fulton County on the CUVA process to possibly make it a little bit easier. I know I had some property in it years ago, and it's gotten to where now it's a lot tougher to get it in that program. So, that may be something that we can work to try to make that a little more easier and friendly process to get property in, because that certainly would help. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Matt?
I think we've done a couple of things already with, trying to help some of our equestrian-based businesses, especially with, just recently as an example, putting allowing them to have sell some of their bridles and halters and things like that within their own barns, which I think is good. Anything we can do to continue to promote that, and citizen involvement with regards to the equestrian community, I think is extremely important. We need to get united force in that regard as well, and I'd love to see that happen.
Bill, thank you. Do you have one?
I'm just vaguely familiar with CUVA. Maybe you could explain that to myself and other folks out here that may not be familiar with that.
Is there anybody on staff that's real familiar with it? I mean, I'm somewhat familiar, but
I'm vaguely familiar with it. I know that CUVA stands for Conservation Use Valuation Assessment, and basically what they do is they go out and they put a value on the land based on the use of the land, and not what somebody would pay for it. So if you had land that is agricultural or that has trees on it that you want to sell, or that basically you're not going to be developing, then you can go and put it in a CUVA, which would decrease the value of the land based on use, and it is held that way for 10 years, I believe, at a time. And if you sell the property off and there is some development, then you actually have to go back and pay back the CUVA, the valuation.
With some penalty.
With a penalty.
It basically, Fulton County did it, Bill, to basically preserve land and to where it had to be either, I believe, a 10-acre minimum, or you had to have some kind of working agricultural use of some kind of farm, raise some kind of animals or crops or whatever. And basically, as Stacy said, it was a 10-year, basically you signed into it, and for 10 years it held your taxes down a whole lot based on agricultural land and at a low value. So it really was a good incentive to keep your property taxes down. And it was held for 10 years. Now, if during that 10 years you changed the property or sold it or went to develop it, you had to pay back the taxes that you would have paid plus a penalty, as Karen said. So it was just and again, to my point, in the past, that had probably a much bigger impact than it possibly does now, as land values have gotten way on up. When you have a lot less in your land and you get a nice tax break, it's different than if you got this much in it now and the tax break's not there. But again, all these things add up. Everything on this list, if it just met 5%, you add them up and it makes a big difference. So, again, this is more, I don't think there's any decision the council needs to make on this other than maybe if we want to, in the future, look for more ways that we can put incentives, or, again, my thoughts are maybe to work with the county to make the CUVA process a little bit different. They've tightened it up, or I say tightened it up, they've made it a lot more stringent now, and to where if you had a home on the property, you have to basically parcel off that home and separate it from the property, and
So you
this
get
and
two
that.
different tax bills then.
Yeah, and, surveying and transferring.
So you have to record it.
Exactly. So it's just, again, I think some people probably have not renewed it because of some of the things there.
There's
So,
a cost involved then in
yeah. So, next thing, conservation staff. Personally, my opinion is, and we've worked with consultants and had good luck and all that, but at some point, in fact, Ken, if you don't mind, I know there's been talk, with on some of our consultants we've hired, but basically with our purchasing policy, where we can only do so much with a sole source on professional services.
That's right.
And it's not just City of Milton. This is pretty typical, and it makes sense. I'll start, but basically, if we find an expert in an area and we want to hire them as a city to come in and do a task, we can do that up to $30,000. We can spend up to $30,000 on that. As you go past that, it needs to go out to competitive bids, and requests for proposals and competitive bids and whatnot. We can't just keep renewing that. And that, the good thing about that, it keeps cities, counties, whatever, from just hiring somebody that somebody knows and then just keep renewing a contract, and before long it's probably some kind of favoritism or whatever.
Right.
So again, we've done some things with consultants, but we can't continue doing that once we run out of once we've renewed those contracts. So at some point we can. One of the things is we can also hire a full-time position or a part-time position as a city employee. And so my thoughts are, I'd love to get everybody's input, but is to basically hire somebody that's their job with the city, to explore every opportunity we have, basically put a face on the conservation of the city that's out talking to folks, drumming up interest in these ideas, whether it's, TDRs and conservation easements and all that, but somebody full-time that's researching, keeping up the cutting edge, out talking and walking the streets and whatnot. And to me, that's, the advantage to having somebody on our staff doing that is it also sends a message that, City of Milton, they're really into conservation if they've, got a full-time or, have a permanent employee doing that. So I'm totally open to anybody's thoughts on that, or whether we want to, keep this on a list to do or not. Rick?
I guess I know I'd raised the question, Ken, on what we could do, because we had invested with a consultant, and what I was interested in was seeing the product that person was working on bring more to fruition. When we talked about the different tools in the toolbox and actually giving us details of what we could do, and we talked about conservation incentives, we really were talking about not just CUVA, but what other things are out there. So I guess going back, because I know I've been sending the notes back and forth, question is, if we in fact didn't go the route of a full-time person, but we wanted to, for a period of time, invest and try to get some of these initiatives pushed through so we get it more detailed, how do we go about that? We can't extend, you're saying we can't extend a contract. How would we go about doing that if we as a council did want to invest?
There's a couple of different variations. I don't know if this is on your personnel policies or your purchasing policies, but one of them that you had done had been to retain by way of just, you have a personal services exemption, a professional services exemption as well. You'd use that. And then you have your sole source, but typically your sole source requires certification of sole source, and so I think the city manager certified that once and then was uncomfortable doing it again, because at some point you just can't make a legitimate justification that there's only one source in the entire state of Georgia or nation that can provide this product. And so it does give us some flexibility. So, I mean, the easiest way would be is to put together either, if you're not interested in going a full-time or part-time staff member, then the easiest way would simply be to do some sort of an RFP and put together some criteria by which we think this individual or entity, if it's a consultant entity, needs to provide, and let individuals submit a proposal for it. I mean, that's perfectly consistent with your policies. But again, I think you may not only just get sole practitioners, you may get consulting firms that would respond to that. If you're looking for an individual, candidly, think about hiring someone.
And that's one thing I throw out. I just get folks' feedback is again, not asking for a yes or a no, but is the council interested in having our staff put together a job description and some goals and whatnot that that position could do, and are we interested in looking at that and looking at that as well as going out for requests for proposals? Bill?
Maybe comment on that. Given our history in the last 5-6 years, we've gone out and solicited RFQs from specialists in different areas. Randall Arndt in conservation subdivision ordinances, Laurel Florio in TDRs, Caleb in form-based codes. We've gotten experts in each of those specific, discrete, distinct areas there. I would hesitate to think that there's any one single expert out there that we could hire that would be expert in all of those fields. So I think to Ken's point, we'd probably be more well-served by going to a firm and submitting an RFQ. But having said that, we've already gone through the process here in the last several years of hiring these specific consultants, and I'm not sure how many of those findings, well, Caleb for one, we've adopted his form-based codes for Deerfield and Crabapple, but as far as the other ones, I don't think we've really adopted those as they have been presented to us by those individual consultants. Don Broussard, for example, came up with the conservation subdivision ordinance, and I think we had his version, then we had another version of it, a truncated version of it, and it's like I said, repeating myself, we've solicited from experts in the field, but I don't think we could have one single individual, not even part-time, to adopt or be conversant in all of these specific areas out here. So I think it goes back to doing an RFQ for a firm that may be conversant in all of them, but we've been through this whole process with several of these individual issues before.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole purpose of hiring experts or consultants for a short period of time is to, smooth over a gap between our internal understanding, our staff's understanding of a particular area, and where we need to be. So I think that our actions in the past have, served that purpose. They, closed some gaps, helped us to get up to speed on particular issues. I don't think that every single consultant should be viewed as a success or a failure based on something that we adopt based on, their activity. I think that's being, too specific. But I think that the whole idea of what you're talking about here in terms of the Legacy Milton Initiative is something that
it goes beyond a single, staff member. I think it's an attitude, and it's an idea that the city's promoting that needs to be adopted by, everybody on the staff. So if what we're saying is we're looking for one individual to become the face of that, I'd say we might already have that individual on our staff. So maybe we need to beef up staff in a particular area. Maybe we need to add to staff, but I wouldn't necessarily say that we have to find somebody to do this job. I think that's something that we can do, and that we have the facility and the resources to do today. So,
to your point, it may be just a description that falls within, an existing employee. But again, Karen?
I feel a little bit differently. I don't think we need somebody that's an expert in all these areas, because I don't think we're going to find anyone that's an expert in all these areas, but I think we need somebody, at least on a part-time basis, that's the champion of the conservation initiative and will work with all the different experts on a total project.
And that was my point. Sometimes you have somebody that, if that's their specific job and goal, and you look at it long term, over not just a short 3-month period or whatever, but a year or 2 years, whatever, they're going to come across opportunities and they're going to make a difference. Without putting anybody on the spot, I'll use our city architect, Bob, as an example. We made the decision after paying consultants to do specific projects. After a while, we made the decision to bring in-house and hire Bob, full time. And I would venture to, I think so, and believe that everybody else here realizes that over time, again, Bob's not, an expert in every field or whatever, but just having someone that's kind of managing and looking out over time on that has been a benefit. So, again, I'm not necessarily saying, to Bill's point or anybody else, or to Karen's, but that it has to be, hire an expert or whatever, but just somebody to basically organize, be on top of things. And again, to Joe's point, maybe it's just a description that falls within our own staff if there's room there. It's not certainly going to replace the experts in the field, but as we've seen, Laurel's here tonight. We've had some contracts for her. I'd love for Laurel to come to work for the city. So that'd be great. But again, I'm looking long term that we'd have somebody that every day is in here promoting and looking for things and knows that that's their job to produce this ultimate goal. So
I think it brought this point up several months ago, this specific issue, and I think it got misinterpreted as we needed a full-time staff. I think my intent when I brought it up was I think we need somebody on staff to coordinate all of these different aspects. Like I said, we went out and hired specialists in each field, but we may not find anybody that's conversant or expert in all of these fields. Maybe it's
I don't think you will.
Some coordinator on staff that can coordinate all of these specific issues here.
Conservation project manager.
Yeah, that's my point. It could be done possibly with an existing staff, or a reasonable position could be formed. So again, is that? I'll just kind of go back. We're not making any decisions tonight, but is that something that the council would consider one to look into? Possible job description and goals and an impact or not. Not saying anybody has to make a decision on that we're saying yes or no, but would the council be interested on this item in looking at the information on that?
Yes.
Sure.
That was my intent a couple months ago.
Okay. Well, that's the whole reason we're doing this, to bring everybody's intents and put them together, and let's move forward with something. I think we have a public comment.
We have one from Laura Runcher.
Okay.
My name is Laura Rencher. I live at 1060 Birmingham Road. I think one of the things that I've really struggled with this is that I'm not clear about what the city's mission is. we want to preserve rural character, we want to conserve land. I want to know what that means to you all, because it's not clear to me at all. It's not the same thing as what I mean. So I really hope that if you're going to develop a plan, you can start with deciding what land conservation means to you all. Because what I discovered when I talked to Stacy is that there's not a really, the definition was land safe from development. Well, that can be your working definition. I don't know what it is, but I hope that you all can do that, because I don't think that hiring a staff member, right now we've got somebody talking about somebody coming in and coordinating all these different things, but I don't see a vision. I don't see your vision. I don't know what your vision is. It's not defined to me. So, and I know that Laurel did a lot of planning for this, and she did have a vision, and it was related to conservation. But I also know that her plan was rejected. So I need to understand what the city's vision is if the vision of the conservation consultant is rejected.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
That's all, sir.
I think we got a couple that are filling out forms.
And feel free to, if someone wants to speak on this particular topic, come on up and you can fill out your form, for you.
Hi. I'm Norm Broadwell. I live at 105 North Christopher Run, Milton. I have a question I'd like to pose. I've read the document. It's ambitious. It's challenging. But when you talk about a sense of community, I wonder how you develop that without a sense of history. And at this point, let me also say that I'm a former member of the HPC. I'm not here to criticize that body. They're good people. And we gave some honest efforts on some things. But I think it's time that council and staff begin to rethink the city's approach to history. The first year I set out in the fire station with Linda Blow, and we put together some things. In the first year that we had council, we were able to achieve some things. And something happened when you changed your approach and you accepted what the state does. It killed us. It is not, first of all, and Councilman West can attest to this also, because we had submitted 4 things that are vital to the history of the area, which was not accepted by the state at all. You get nowhere with that. To be defeated 6-0 on a historic district tells you something too. And I understand that. If I were a Crabapple business owner, I wouldn't have accepted it either. But it's time to rethink the way we do history here. There are various things that can be identified throughout the area. I sat at the memorial service last week. Great turnout, very inspiring. And I looked around, though, and I wondered how many of the folks sitting there understood that they sat in Webb, Georgia. You go to Crabapple, we go to Friendship Park. How many people know that that was the original baseball field for Crabapple? How many know that the Willow Bat Boys were there? The ladies who had the baseball team were there, and a community that sent three guys to the major leagues. History has to be the thread that pulls us through to a sense of community. And I would encourage you, let's give some more thought to that. Now, again, the HPC has it's like putting an overcoat for a grown man on a child, to ask them to do the things that they're doing. We cannot identify Fields Crossroads. We can't talk about Social Hill. We can't talk about Daughter's Chapel and get anything out there unless we have your support. And we've got to look at some different ways to do it. And we have a beautiful opportunity coming up Wednesday. Thank goodness you had the foresight to buy a historic piece of property. And I congratulate you on that. And here again, I'm not here to criticize the HPC, but their task is impossible. It is not going to happen. Councilman Lusk has submitted 3 or 4 different areas that should be identified. All of them have been turned down because we can't get through the study. I'm a charter member of the Alpharetta Historical Society. We have taken a different task over there. I live in Milton, though. It's interesting that half of the board in Alpharetta lives in Milton. But we've been able to put 15 identification of markers all through the city. And it's wonderful to see a woman pushing a baby carriage stop and read a marker. We don't have an HP. We don't have a central business district, so we have to approach it differently. But we can do the same thing through automobiles traveling this area and identifying these properties. So let's give that some thought. I hope you'll join us on Wednesday, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. And I'll be the first to say, I think a great item on here to expand on this legacy would be a history, education of our history, and make that part of it. So,
Education and a promotion.
yeah. So if you guys want to, you guys game for that? To add that as a bullet point on here.
Very much so.
Key. Okay, Stacy, thank you. All right, Laura, you have a comment?
Laurel Florio, 790 Gates Mill Way, Milton. Hi, everybody. Just wanted to come up and comment on a couple of things. In regards to the bond, I wanted to build on what Bill was saying about some precursors. The decision to come up with a conservation plan as opposed to a green print was made by the administration because of the cost of $200,000 and the fact that the Trust for Public Land couldn't get it even started until right now, the spring of 2015. That's why we ended up with the product that we have. But in addition to what Bill was saying, I think there's a lot of other things. As a citizen, if you were to rush and put this bond on the ballot soon, I don't think you'd even get my vote. And you guys know, and you know, how much I want to protect what's left to protect in the city. There's a lot of background work that still needs to be done before we can put that onus on our taxpayers and before we can expect them to approve and to be behind it. Nobody's going to spend a dime without really acknowledging and seeing that something is going to come of it. And every one of those initiatives are wonderful, but every one of those is wrought with detail and specific procedure and standards of practice that I'm not sure are being adhered to. All of us in this room are business people, and I ask you that as we continue to think about those initiatives and the bond, which could be a great thing, we look through the lens of a business person and see that the standards and practices and the different things are being followed as they need to be done effectively. Okay? And in terms of a conservation professional, they're out there. We're out there. There are many that act as, I liked what I think, I can't read, Bert said, sorry, about a conservation project manager. That's land trust organizations around this country and governmental organizations around this country have those people in place. They know enough about each individual type of initiative to function as the manager of the whole. The issue is a matter of having cooperation and a desire to have a team-oriented approach to those initiatives happen. So I just wanted to say that as a citizen, I need a lot more. I need a lot more before you ask me to fork over that money, because I desperately want to see this stuff protected, and I believe that we can do that, but there has to be a lot more done in the background to put it in place before you even ask me for that money. Okay? So thanks, I appreciate it, and I believe that maybe we're on to something, as I say.
Okay, thank you. And you know what, this whole conversation and meeting is very productive. It's what I was hoping for, because, you know, we've all discussed that we're all interested in moving forward on a green space bond, but as we said, we've got to explore it more. So it may be something we can do sooner, or it may have to be done later, but, you know, that's what we're doing right now. Is we're trying to move forward, and we're collecting the information we need. But so thank you for your comments. I don't know if we really got anywhere as far as any direction. Again, I guess I'll ask, and if we want to use the term conservation project manager, I think we kind of said, does the council want to at least have that pursuit as far as looking at it? Obviously, we're not making a decision to do it or not, but to get some more information as to whether we would like to go in that direction.
Yes.
So there are folks here that would like to do that. Okay. Again, no, you know, and that's something that, again, I mean, I go back to using Bob, for example. We hire specific architectural firms on specific projects, but you have somebody that's kind of managing the whole process and out looking. So I think there's some benefit there. Stacy, do you have that? At least we'll look into it and bring it back. Some, you know, conservation subdivisions. Obviously, we're in the middle of looking at that right now. So, you know, we don't necessarily have to discuss that. We know that's an important topic right now, and there's a lot of work being done on that. So hopefully that's going to be a placeholder that will be involved. Anybody want to comment on that or have any thoughts?
Joe?
Matt?
I just want to say, Noel, I appreciate all the work you've been doing on that. It's been a lot of research. It's a very intensive piece of initiative that we're trying to take, and I applaud you for all that you've been trying to do to get everybody together and figure it out. I've been to all the minutes of every meeting that you've had so far, and the meeting on Wednesday, I can't be there, but I'll be sure to watch it. I'm curious to see what the EPD has to say, along with Fulton County, because that's another part of it as well. But I just, as someone who's taken a great burden on his shoulders and ran with that, I just want to applaud you so far.
No, you're welcome to. You can fill it out afterwards.
Hi, my name's Noel Carpenter. I live at 15230 High Grove Road here in Milton. First of all, thank you for what you said. I'm really the conservation subdivision project manager person that you're talking about. And these people here are the ones who actually do it. They're motivated to do it, and they have their own skill set and skill bases and passions that make this stuff happen. And this is what you need. Whether, you know, I can't identify the person that it is, but you need somebody like you've kind of identified. And Bill, you're hitting all around it. And the Bert's saying the project manager person. You need somebody who can identify danger and take your mission where you want to go. The people here are saying, you know, we need to define the mission, which we have a vision, and it's kind of vague, but we need to pin the tail on this donkey and say what it is we want to accomplish, and then give somebody the authority to go cut it loose and get it done. I mean, we've got the demographics, we've got the resources we need, we've got the tax base that we need. We got the people here who can just about buy anything we want. But we got to pick it and then go do it. And so I guess my point is, it can get done, and you got the right people here in this town. We just have to get together behind this, and I think you need a czar. I think you need a guy. This is not a part-time thing. This stuff guides and it affects everything we do around here. And everybody's, I mean, I think you guys are feeling it. We're all on board behind you and with the same thing, and that's one of the reasons why I got involved with this thing I'm doing now, is I felt the passion of the room and the people wanting to go there anyway. They just needed somebody who would organize it in a way to facilitate them to do what it is they wanted to do. So I applaud your efforts, because you got a lot of things going, and a lot of things simmering, and now it's just going to take somebody, to get behind it and go, hey guys, we're going to make it happen. So, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Noel. And, take another opportunity just to thank you for everything you're doing, as well as everybody that's in this room that's been working on this, as well as there's a lot of other folks not in the room that have been working on this. So, anything else on conservation subdivision other than the fact that we know we're certainly working through that, and it's certainly an important part to keep in this big picture here. All right, form-based code. Obviously, we put some of those in place prior. We're looking at on Arnold Mill. Anybody want to? Is that important to keep on the list here? Yep. Anybody have comments on it or anything? Rick?
I was just going to say, I think what we're doing, even what we're going down the route with Arnold Mill, it's a tool that we definitely can use. And I think we were using it effectively in a couple of districts, and now looking at doing it in a third.
Yeah. Okay. Community partnerships. My thoughts on that is people. You tend to get better. Better results when people are involved and committed and working together. People take ownership. So, again, there's several folks in the audience here that I feel like are part of community partnerships. I think Norm brought up a good thing, which I've asked Stacy to put on our list, the placeholder on the history, and tie that in to kind of build. But again, just I think we need to have communication and work with our citizens and our community groups to, again, so that everybody takes some ownership and as part of the solution. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that or wants to keep that placeholder in there. Bill?
Absolutely. I think that's the fabric that holds all of this together. And you talk about, well, specifically Jack with MGG and Dr. Rencher with PRM. I think they have really stirred up a lot of interest in what we're trying to accomplish and promoting it. They may have different views on some of these, but all of that discussion, I think, is healthy in bringing this whole thing together. I know one thing that Preserve Rural Milton has done here recently, and I can't speak to the specifics of it, but they conducted a survey out here within the last month and to determine community interest in a lot of these different areas here. So it's a grassroots organization that's getting with the program, and probably since we went through the sign ordinance eight years ago, I don't think we've had as much community participation in anything as we have in these issues. So you really have to commend folks like that and members of their organization for getting behind this effort and promoting it.
Okay. Yeah, that's again why we wanted to have this on here, because it is very important. Tree ordinance, again, we all know we have a tree ordinance and a fairly good tree ordinance. So, that's just another tool in there to show that, we are interested in our trees and our canopy and cover. So, any comments on that? Want to keep that on there? Or it's obviously it's in place. Okay. TDRs. Kathy, do you mind kind of giving us an update on? I know we've been working hard. Laurel's worked hard and to implement a TDR program. I think there's one kind of in the works. Is that?
Yes, there is one that's still pending, and as a matter of fact, I was in contact with both the buyer and the seller very recently, and there is just a few development issues that they have to tie up before they actually sell and buy the TDRs in that transaction. So it is imminent. It's still moving forward. It just hasn't closed at this point.
Okay. And hopefully that's something that we can, part of putting all this on paper is to promote that as a tool that certainly can be beneficial. Anybody? Any comments or questions from anybody on the TDRs? Okay. Obviously we've got the habitat designation that's been in, I don't know, has it been in about a year? I can't remember. 2013, so almost 2 years. To me that's a nice sign on there that, goes along with what I think everybody likes about Milton and sees. Anybody have any comments on that? We want to absolutely have that on our list. Okay.
And Joe, is part of that to actually continue to maintain it, do we have to continue to grow those areas or add to it? Or is it just a matter of maintaining the areas that you do have today?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anybody? Yeah. Michelle knows.
Yes, you do have to add to the number of homes and the number of government facilities. For instance, the birdhouse, we installed a water basin for bird baths, and all of those flora that was put in by Mark, that would get us to certify that site.
Okay,
so
good.
we'll make the application to put that in, and we'll continue adding sites.
Okay.
So maybe that's something, and again, I wasn't on council when you guys did that initially, but that would maybe be a good one that you actually spell out what can you do for if we have individuals who want to get their part of their property designated. Actually put that out there.
And we did a good job of that when we did it, but it's been a few years, so it's probably time to
Maybe
do it
republicize
again.
it.
Yeah, I tell you, and I'm fine with that. Stacy, maybe if we can relook at the explanation on the designation there that as it's an ongoing thing that will grow.
Sure, we can
So,
remarket that.
Okay. Anybody want to talk? We've obviously have talked about conservation plan, green print project, and moving forward. Anybody want to comment on that? And where we think we want to go with that? I think we're going to, based on comments tonight and feedback, we're going to, obviously our staff's going to need to look at where we are, especially pertaining to the bond as far as the green print and whatnot. So I see that as something coming back to us real quick on information on, my guess is everybody here is supportive, so we just need to keep updated with information on and see where we want to prioritize that. Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay. Again, I tell people that it's funny they ask you, what are the things that you're most proud about in the city of Milton and all that we've accomplished. And what I've noticed, I say early on, the first couple of years and all that was you started to, every year you'd see a little bit more of a sense of community. It wasn't just about the bricks and sticks, but it's a sense of community where people are getting involved and feeling proud about where they live, but also by getting involved with issues. And sometimes you may have a negative issue and they're perceiving it's a negative issue, and then they get involved and start helping out and coming up with a solution. And again, it exponentially grows as they bring other folks in and all that. And Noel is, I'm sure you're a good example, as well as Laura and Joan and Jack and everybody else that's in here, citizen-wise, getting involved, and it makes everybody feel a lot better about what they're doing and making a difference. So, I just think that's a good thing to market ourselves with, that we're really building a sense of community. And to Norm's, point when he was speaking, you know, along with the history, that always brings folks, they feel better about it. Anybody else, anything on the sense of community? All right. Rural viewshed zoning. That's something we've all talked about, and again, I think that makes a big difference what people see when they drive down the road. So does anybody want to, you know, we've worked on that sign, anybody want to comment on that? Or that's also something we'll certainly could look at much more once, if we do go forward with a bond too, so as part of a tool. Anybody have any? Jack, would you like to make a comment? See, if you're one of the last few here, you get to make more comments.
Yeah, right. Thank you. I just wanted to say, this rural viewshed zoning is an issue that's, I think, going to be probably one of the most difficult ones to deal with because it's the most likely to cause problems with property rights. And I just wanted to say, sort of obliquely, that one of the things that we've been kicking around in our groups with regard to the conservation subdivision idea is the idea of having options which would allow different kinds of subdivisions to be built, some of which would have regular, the neutral density amount of building, and others that would have less than the neutral density amount of building. And one of the possibilities you could put into that is the idea of requiring buffer zones, undeveloped buffer zones along major thoroughfares for any development over a certain size. And as long as it's incorporated with a number of options, some of which allow the same density and maybe even a bonus in density, with options that curtail some of the density because of a buffer zone that's been imposed, I think has more of a chance of passing the smell test, the legal test that the state of Georgia would impose on that. So I just wanted to point that out. We'll be talking more about that as we go down the road with the conservation subdivision design issue. But there was one thing I wanted to say, and believe me, this sounds completely like a non sequitur, but it's not. I just spent a week at the beach and did a lot of reading, and one of the magazines I was reading.
Can you tell them what floor you were on?
It was on the 9th floor, yes, right on the beach. It was really nice.
I say that, pun intended, which, you know, we're talking about rural view shed and rural look.
Exactly. It had a wonderful view shed. And one of the articles I was reading was on the beetles. What is it? What are the beetles that attack the trees, the pine trees?
Pine beetles.
Pine beetles. Pine
bark. that one.
Pine bark beetles. Yes.
I don't know the term, the scientific term.
Right.
I thought he was talking about Ringo and George.
I don't remember the name of the phylum and that sort of thing. Anyway, this article had some very interesting things to say about it, and I wanted to read this one sentence that really struck me. It says, real estate agents have seen some prices plummet from viewshed contaminations in areas ransacked by the bugs. Mm-hmm. It's the first time I'd seen a reference to the value of property related to viewsheds. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important. And this whole issue of property rights and community rights, I think, you know, you really need to balance the property rights of the owners with the rights of the community to maintain what it hopes to be seeing in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Burke?
I think this viewshed zoning or whatever you want to call it is something that potentially has one of the biggest impacts of what we can do. Again, like Jack says, balancing everybody so everybody feels like they're made whole. I'm not sure we would be having as much of this intense discussion on conservation if you didn't ride down so many streets and see a 500-foot swath, you know, for subdivision here and there and there. If you saw merely what appeared to be, you know, whatever the width is, you know, 50-foot cutout, and then, you know, for X amount of feet, and then the subdivision starting. I think some of these things would be nipped in the bud as it goes, again, with the buffers all around it. I do think it's key that you make everybody feel like they're coming out whole in it. So I think that's something that we really need to push forward, and whether it's its own distinct thing or some changes with our current Ag 1 zoning, or some of these new things that might be coming up. I think that's something that we need to hit the ground running with.
Okay. Rick, okay.
Yeah, in fact, I agree with Bert. I think a lot of the discussion and the things that we've heard from people when they say, there's too much development, it's really changing the look and feel of what Milton is. Today they drive down meandering roads, they'll see trees. What they don't like to see is us and brick pushed right up onto the road where it used to be more rural. I think that's when we kind of boil it down. So how we do that, I think it kind of plays into what we're doing also with conservation subdivision. I think that's part of that discussion, whether you call it zoning or changing, like you had said, Bert, to one of our AG1, what we call AG1 today. Maybe part of that, we need to look at that, and that may be changed when we kind of boil this all out with conservation subdivision too.
Okay.
To me, when I think of rural viewshed, I don't think of just necessarily big open pastures. I think of subdivisions like North Valley and subdivisions like Tullamore, where you have 4 to 6 acre lots and you have the horses and the pastures in front of the houses. To me, that's as much Milton as it is some of the open space, and that's something we really need to try to incentivize more 4 to 6 acre lot subdivisions as opposed to 1 acre lot subdivisions. And I think the only way we're going to be able to do that is through incentives. But I would love to see us work on incentivizing that kind of subdivision as opposed to everything being either 1 acre lots or in conservation subdivisions. I think that kind of subdivision really is the rural character of the area.
I agree. Matt?
I do too, and actually I think the conservation subdivision is actually the antithesis of the rural viewshed zoning, because the conservation subdivision gives us the best chance to have equestrian-based animals in front of homes in a community-type property. I think that there's a way for that to happen, and I think that from where I am, being the northernmost elected official in all of Fulton County, yet most of the area up on Freemanville Road is being sought after with regards to subdivision. It's not bricks up on the side of homes. It's about a change of the overall landscape, and that change will happen with regards to how our development happens. But for what we see and what my vision is up there is really looking at combined natural areas with village type hamlets within those subdivisions. And if we don't have a way to do that, then we wind up having just urban sprawl that looks like Dunwoody. And so I think some of these, as my point before, is that some of these are more effective than others. Some of these are antithesis of the others. Some of these work together with each other. But we're going to have to decide what it is we want over the next couple of months. And I think this is a great way to talk about it. I think that though we have to really question whether or not we're going to be effective with this, because I think economics play a big, big, big part in what it is we're trying to do. And the more we delay, the more we run the risk of something happening to us rather than our directing where we want to go.
Okay. Anybody else? And again, going through here, we've kind of gone through some things that seem to be important. We've added a couple of things. Is there anything else that you guys, and if you think about it later, whatever, please email us, email me, and or whatever. Let's talk about if there's some bullet points you guys want to add. I don't think we're really subtracting anything, but again, this this to me, my intent with it is a moving document that, as we move forward, we're all putting input into it. But it's really, and again, it's just to try to promote all the things that we have a council, and thank you to our staff for all the things that as we went through this, and this conversation has been good, you see all the things that we have already accomplished and that are in effect, as well as some new ideas, and everybody seems to be interested in. So again, that was the whole intent of this, to, basically put some stuff on paper. None of it's new. It's, like I said, most of it's all either in place or we've been working on it. So it's more to have an open, and I think it was good. We had some community members here and got some good feedback and council and all that. So again, I look at this as being a way that we can kind of promote the rural lifestyle of Milton, and however you want to Laura's comment, want to know what our exact vision is. It's preservation. Unfortunately, everybody's got a little bit different vision. I think we all know what we like and what we see, but it's all in a different perspective. But I think by, working on all these things together, it's certainly going to make a definite impact and a positive. When we look back 50 years, or we probably won't, but when maybe our kids, whatever,
Me and Matt.
they'll see that there's a difference. So, Bert?
What I think what this does is putting these things together in one place, and so I'm adding some to it, and I'm sure some will add to it as well. Some of them have been like the tree ordinance in existence for years. Others, like rural view shed zoning, are going to be hitting up on our radar. All of us in this room that are involved in this know what these impacts on these things are to this whole overall preservation effort that we're in the middle of right now. I don't think the average person out there that's not involved in this doesn't think that the wildlife habitat, that's part of preservation, even if it's just a little area in your yard. So I like this, putting it together, bundling it up. I think, as Chris says, kind of puts a little bow on it, so people can see what's out there, what's available, what we're doing, what's on the radar. But what we've got to do is some of these things that we've talked about today is we've got to follow through and keep on this, and maybe even look at having a monthly update on it once some of these things are going. So where are these going? What are we doing? Where are we? Where do we need to go? This, that, and the other. And to me, one of the first things to help that is this, whatever form it takes, this staff person almost needs to be there first, and then we start, we can start working on some of these things. But this puts it all in one place where we can all kind of know what we're working towards, whether it be us as a council, the staff knows that we're working as a council, this is where we want to go, the committees know that this is where we want to go. It may not have, laser point precision, but we know at least that we're going this way or this way. So I like this coming together in one place with some additions, and I'm sure there'll be some additions and things that come as this moves on. But I'd like to see, in July. I know we have a heavy schedule in July, but maybe in August, where are we on some of these things that we've talked? Let's have some updates, kind of like we're doing on the staff reports every meeting, so we can make sure that this is moving forward. The things that can have the biggest impact move forward, and we're not a year from now.
Look at us.
Exactly. What we can do, we can prioritize a few of these things that are time sensitive and have an update, and then as like you said, Bert, they build on each other. To me, the reason I started thinking about putting it all down, it's like doing a resume. Sometimes you may forget about what you do, and then you do a resume and you put it all on paper, and you go, wow, I forgot I had done that. I did this. Oh, yeah, I was doing this. And all of a sudden you put everything down on a list, and maybe it looks a little better than you thought. And again, I felt the same thing here. We've done all this great stuff, and we've got a lot of great stuff we can do, but let's put it on paper and get the discussion going and get fired up about it and get the word out. So, anybody?
More closely related to our industry, building a schedule and determining where your critical path is.
Yep. Karen, did you have something? Yep. All right. Thank you guys for working on this. Is there anything else? All right. Well, I appreciate everything. We'll close the meeting. Thank you to our citizens and committee members that are here.